I have on display an installation piece that I call Paper or Plastic. It's about a 15-foot hanging installation made out of newspaper sleeves for both the Washington Post and the New York Times. And they're all fused into kind of flag-like flat shapes. And they are part of this show because the artists in this show did a workshop about evolution about a year ago. And we were talking about how slight changes in DNA can affect small changes or large changes over time. And so we're trying to figure out how to manifest that in art. And as I looked at all of these newspaper sleeves, I realized that the color changes slightly, I think because they're recycled. But they still try to maintain them within certain color ranges. So I collected them over the course of a year and started thinking about all of those color changes and how people probably don't notice them when they see them every morning, but when you put them all together, you start to see the progression. So I fused them into this series so that you could see what the large range of color is and ponder that a little bit. And then also I arranged all of the flag-like fused pieces with spacers that are used straws, plastic straws, because there is this ongoing environmental issue around straws, plastic straws being bad for the environment. But I have a friend who has ALS, and she is unable to drink without a straw, and she can't use a paper straw, and she can't use a metal straw. So she has to use a plastic straw, even though they are, people don't think they're good for the environment anymore. And she feels bad about that, but it's what she has to do. So it was part of raising awareness about that as well. And they come in a lot of different colors, so I intersperse them in between the pieces. So that's about paper or plastic as well, about choices we make that affect the environment incrementally sometimes, and in other ways, in big ways other times.
Well, my work is dealing with an energetic aspect of evolution, the evolution within us. I'm interested in painting landscapes of emotional states, and I'm working with layers and layers of patterns and keeping in mind the colors associated with the energy centers in the body, the chakras. So this piece gave me a bit of a problem. I really didn't like it while I was working on it, and I still from afar don't really like it, but if you stare at it you like it a little bit more. And I ended up calling it light water as opposed to heavy water as a meditation on peace, and the opposite of heavy water making bombs. So the inspiration for the circles came from, I tried to attend this Vespers service at All Souls Unitarian Church, which is right around the corner from my house in Columbia Heights. And once a month, the second Wednesday of every month, they have a Vespers service that's based on a monastic French tradition that has repetitive chants. And back like in February, one of the chants was, I am a circle, I am healing you, you are a circle, you're healing me, unite us and become one. So that's a motivation factor to use the circles.
These are ink paintings on a surface called Yupo. A Yupo is a plastic paper. Basically it's a sheet of polypropylene. So the ink makes really interesting patterns on it, and everything that I do is inspired by science. So this whole show is basically inspired by a workshop that I did last year. I did a short residency in a fruit fly lab in Paris, which sounds kind of bizarre and random, but so I was the artist in residence in a fruit fly lab in Paris where they were studying questions of evolution. So, for example, this piece is actually fruit fly embryos. So one of the things that really interested me was the idea that you could look really closely at tiny little creatures like a fruit fly or, even a single-celled creature and learn a lot about evolution in a way that links it to, humans or just, like any kind of animal or plant on the earth, we're all subject to evolution. So just fascinating to see how scientists can start with something so small and extrapolate so much from it.
It's just strung through two pieces of string along through the straws on each of the flags that are reinforced. So it's just one long, about 15-foot piece with knots on either end. I just was really careful to balance them and measure out carefully. So when we installed it, we just took one end with two pieces of string and attached it on one end, and then just very carefully lifted it on the other side so that it hung at the right angle and made the right curve. So it looks a little bit like a graph or a Chinese dragon.
So I use a lot of water-based spray paint and stencils. Some of the stencils I actually buy, some of them I cut by hand in Mylar, and then I layer acrylic paints and mediums, some of them making them very transparent, and also in the black gesso I've used a lot of iridescent colors that are just going to sparkle. And it actually evolves. I don't plan them out at all. I don't start. The only thing with these that started as any remotely a plan was the fact that I used a circle and was motivated by that meditative chant. And thinking about the energy centers and the colors associated with them, and what aspects of your body and how you process the world.
I use a technique called masking first, which is like I create the outline of the image that I want with a mask, which is kind of like a glue. And then over the top of that, I put water, and then I drop ink into it. Sometimes I just leave it at that, and the ink just forms patterns. With the brain paintings, I wanted to suggest the process of learning and memory. So what I did was I would add the ink and let it sit for a while, and then wash half of it off or like most of it off, and it just kind of leaves little ghosts and patterns. Kind of like the information that we get doesn't all stay in our minds, as a whole. Sometimes it just leaves a little bit of a trace. And then, you get new information or new ideas, and that goes on the top. So I did several layers of that.
Oh, I love it. I mean, the openings are always fun because you get to get a whole lot of people in who you've told to be here in order to talk to them. But I love being in this kind of space because since it's a community center, all sorts of people are coming through here all the time. They can have different kinds of experiences that they bring to what they're looking at and what they think about the art. And it's up for a long enough time that they really get to come back and see it more than once if they want. While we were installing it, there were a bunch of the kids from the camp here watching us, how we were getting it up and telling us whether they liked it or not. And I love that kind of feedback. It's really great.
I think it's a really good way to see the work. It's a really diverse audience here. Every time I come to Community Center, I'm just amazed by how active it is. We have yoga classes, music classes, movies, ping pong, art classes, all ages. So in many ways, more diverse audience than a commercial gallery. I think a lot of people are inhibited sometimes going into commercial galleries, and this is meeting people where they are.
Well, I mean, I love it. I've been showing my work for probably 18 years. So yeah, I've done a lot of shows, and I mean, it's always really just amazing to get your work out in front of new people, and I love that we're in a community center and that a really wide variety of people are going to see it. So it's really nice.